Hello, my name is Emma. I'm a practicing Catholic and I'm also going to a different house of worship every week. So this week we are going to a Maronite Catholic church, which is an Eastern rite of the Catholic Church. And it's also really exciting because this is the first church where I've actually been able to have communion at. So I'm super excited to see like what all the similarities are and basically if there's anything different, what it looks like. But yeah, I will check in afterwards. We are back from Mass, and I have to say, I think I finally understand how other Christians feel when they go to a Catholic Mass for the first time because I did not understand a lot of what just went on, but it was really cool and it was really awesome that I could participate because we were in the same church. I will give you a little background of what I learned about the Maronite Church, have the brochure from the church itself, so hopefully I'm correct, and then I'll walk you through the Mass and what I noticed and what I was thinking about. For background, there's the Global Catholic Church. Within this church, there are 6 different traditions. They're Alexandrian, Antiochian, I believe, Armenian, Chaldean, Byzantine, and Latin/Roman. So all of these churches are in communion with each other. They have the same dogmatic faith, 7 sacraments, moral teachings, and unity with the Pope in Rome. So we are all one church, but what makes each church different is that there's a different liturgy, spirituality and discipline. There's a cultural and linguistic tradition within them, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Each church is guided by a patriarch who, quote, along with the synod of bishops, is in full communion with the Pope, the successor of St. Peter. So the church that I went to was part of this Antiochian Syriac tradition, and it's the Maronite church within that tradition. The Maronite church dates back to early Christians of Antioch, and it uses the liturgical language of Syriac, which this brochure says it's a dialect of Aramaic that Jesus himself spoke, and the church takes her name from the priest hermit St. Maron, who died in 410 AD. So walking into the church itself, it seemed pretty similar to a Roman Catholic church that I might walk into. I would say the mural on the back wall looked more Eastern, just the way it was painted, and there were all those like semicircular domes. But other than that, it looked pretty similar. We still had Jesus on the cross. We had the Stations of the Cross along the outside of the church. Nothing that super stood out to me. In general, a lot of the Mass was chanting, and chanting either in Syriac or in English. And it seemed like these were all chants that were standard that people knew the melodies of. So the contents of the prayers are similar about God having mercy on us, about us glorifying Him, but the prayers themselves are super different, and there was no Mass part that I was familiar with that really overlapped with those. And this was all until we got to the Eucharistic prayer, in which a lot of those prayers and those words were similar, and I could anticipate what was about to happen. But then this part of the Mass, the consecration, was a lot longer, and there were a lot more prayers after the ones that I recognized. Something that was really cool as well is that there were whole passages where the priest was chanting in Syriac. And I'd been to Masses in another language, like I've been to French Mass, Spanish Mass, Latin Mass, but I'd never heard a non-Western language being spoken. So it was really interesting, especially because these Mass parts themselves are different. So there was no direct translation in English that I already knew. Well, another part, as a music person, was really cool to hear all of these harmonies and these scales that you just don't hear in Western music. And it just felt so natural and fit into this liturgy so well. So more practically, the Mass included more than I expected. Like everyone chanted as the candles were being lit, and that was part of the Mass, as well as when the candles were being put out. There was no psalm in between the first and the second reading, but there was still an Alleluia before the Gospel where everyone stood up. There was still a homily about the same length as a homily in the Roman Catholic Church. And the themes today were about having faith, but also having faith come from God that we basically nurture. Having that be the vertical part of the cross, and then having the horizontal part of the cross be wisdom and prudence, and really living out that faith in the world through our experiences. Something that was really sweet was the sign of peace was not handshakes as I expected. They sent the altar servers, who were adorable. They were so little, and they went like this. And then everyone else put their hands around there. Okay, wait, pretend this is the altar server's hand. So I put my hand kind of like that over the altar servers. And it's just really sweet. I'd never seen that before in a church setting. And also what's interesting is that I believe there's different, I don't know a better word, scripts for the Mass from which they choose. So the first half of the Mass, basically the liturgy of the word, was a particular page number. And I assume that it wasn't every week because everyone was reading, even the people who seemed like they knew what they were doing. And then for the Nicene Creed, we turned to a new section, there were prayers. And then afterwards, we turned to the anaphora of St. Peter, and I noticed there were a bunch of different ones of those. So I'm wondering I guess how you choose between them, if there's a cycle or it's just kind of the preference of either the priest or the parish. But it was really interesting that there are so many different ways to celebrate this mass that you could choose from. And that's another thing to talk about, is that there was this giant book that had all of the mass parts, and it was really cool. So it had the English translation on one side, and then the either Syriac or Arabic or both translations on the other side. Just another reminder of how universal the church is and how it's so cool that you can celebrate in so many different places and languages. But that's a separate idea. So in general, you can tell this is the same church. A lot of what we prayed about, who we prayed to, what we prayed for, it was the same. But at the same time, I had no idea what was coming. The mass parts were completely different. The orders of some of the different prayers were different than what I expected. There were particular anchors like the creed, the Our Father, that I was like, okay, I got this. But everything else, I was reading off the script, going, I hope I don't mess this up. But it was beautiful, and I think it is a really, really cool reminder how our church and our faith can be both accessed and celebrated in so many different ways. They also mentioned to me that every other week they host a Byzantine mass on Sundays. So I'm hoping to be able to see that, just to see another tradition of this church. So very cool. I'm feeling a little I feel a little overwhelmed, but it was really cool and I would definitely go again.